Welcome to Between the Lines. I'm Nate Polite alongside Adam Crooks. Adam, we had a busy day of racing over the weekend. Everything was on the Sunday for once. You know, F1 still early mornings, but wasn't before with the clock struck over midnight, so that's nice. And now we get 35 days without Formula One. We'll touch on that a little later. But NASCAR brought the O'Reilly Series and Cup Series to Martinsville Speedway. O'Reilly Series has typically been a bit of a disaster there recently. It was okay.
Yeah.
Justin Allgaier wins.
Yes.
Dominant so
Did
far
I say
this
Justin
season.
Allgaier was going to win?
I don't think we did Martinsville or Xfinity O'Reilly truck.
I don't remember.
Week.
I would have guessed Justin.
You picked
Allgaier
for Darlington.
I did pick Justin Allgaier for Darlington.
I think that's what it was. So Justin Allgaier looks like Tyler Reddick.
Yes, he does.
Good season to be a short ginger in NASCAR. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Listen, Justin Allgaier, a big win in the O'Reilly Auto Parts race. Good start to the season for Junior Motorsports. I mean, you really can't have asked for much more. Justin Allgaier won the championship last year, and he very well looks like he's in championship form again this year.
2 years ago. It was love last year.
You're right.
Yeah, he looks like he could go ahead and just straight up win the points-paying championship. No, doesn't even have to worry about a playoffs this time around. Just got to be good, and that's really been the topic of conversation when it comes to Justin Allgaier this season. On the Cup Series side of things, it was all Denny Hamlin until it wasn't. A really bold call by Alan Gustafson brings Chase Elliott in early in Stage 3. They were planning on doing a two-stop strategy. Caution comes out right smack in the middle of everything while Elliott's running second. Free positions, and he's able to jump up and go ahead and take the lead on that restart and hold Denny Hamlin off.
He made it work. This is, I think, kind of we were talking about the brand new Chevy car. We were talking about the Hendrick guys. This is the win that I think the Hendrick guys needed. And it doesn't come from a usual player. I mean, you'd expect Kyle Larson to be really good and win here. You'd expect William Byron to be really good and win at Martinsville. It comes from Chase Elliott, a guy who's kind of in need of a win. I think he only had, one or two last year?
Two last year, yeah. Atlanta and Kansas.
Good way to start the season early for Chase Elliott. I think we saw last year, he was kind of on the back foot for most of the season until that Atlanta win and then the Kansas win. This is I think the early win that we haven't seen from Chase Elliott in recent years that I think is kind of going to get the snowball rolling. I don't want to say he's in championship contention, because we obviously have a long way to go. But I think Chase Elliott can certainly be a guy who's up near the front. We've seen him run up near the front in the points often, and I think the Chase format really benefits him.
I would agree on the Chase benefiting Chase. I think that was one of my biggest takeaways at the start of the season. My buddy kind of always says Chase Elliott's the top 20 champion for a reason. That 9 team does a really good job of making bad days into okay days and okay days into good days. This time they turned an okay day. They're outside the top 10 on speed. Made some adjustments, threw a Hail Mary, and Chase Elliott said he thought the two-stop strategy was going to end up working in their favor anyway. But this turned into a fantastic day. Didn't score a single stage point, comes home with the victory, is the first driver to score less points as a race winner than anybody else. Denny Hamlin scored 56 with his 2 stage wins, plus the finish in second place, as well as fastest lap. So Hamlin outscores Elliott, but Elliott gets the win, and these are the wins that Chase Elliott needs to supplement that, quote-unquote top 20 championship of being able to avoid the bad days, which that team already does so well.
I completely agree, and to your point with Denny outscoring Chase, it's gutting. With, I think Denny led, 292 laps?
It's something ridiculous.
The day that Denny Hamlin had was outstanding, but I think if you're Denny Hamlin in this 11 team, because of the new Chase format, you're not as gutted you don't win this race. Yes, it sucks that, you don't get that first win under your belt this year, but you scored more points than the race winner. You won 2 stages. I think you come out of this feeling pretty good because at the end of the day, the wins don't really mean anything anymore. I mean, they matter.
Yeah.
They still do.
The extra 15 points of what it would have been last year are nice, for sure.
Yes, they're really great, but you come away scoring more points than the winner, I'm okay with that day.
Yeah,
A second place finish isn't awful.
yeah, you're the winner points-wise. It's nice to have, a second win of the season to supplement Vegas a couple of weeks ago, but at the end of the day, you are kind of the winner anyway because you outscored everybody else and you're able to jump up in those point standings. Hamlin's certainly going to be in title contention this season based off of what we've seen. He looks to be the fastest at Gibbs, and Gibbs might be the fastest team, save for 2311, who were pretty slow at Martinsville.
They weren't great at Martinsville, and it just kind of overall wasn't a great day. Bubba got into that controversial accident, not caused by Carson Hocevar this time. Carson Hocevar was a victim. That might be the first time we've ever said that sentence.
Very true.
I think, with the dominant start that they had, you're going to have days like this. You really are. It's, can you make the most out of those days? Bubba didn't make the most out of these today. He had a chance to, pick up 20 extra points or however many extra points, but you end up in the infield care center with a wrecked race car. Just not a great way to finish the day. I know he felt that he got slighted by Carson Hocevar taking it 3 wide on the restart into turn number 1, but right now in the old system, I would tell you that it's not the worst thing in the world. He can go out, 2311 can go out, win a couple races, and be fine. Every point matters. Yeah. Even if it's at Martinsville and it's 15th or 16th, or it's 20th or 30th, every single point matters. And I don't think Bubba's necessarily going to regret this in the long term, but it's a decision that these guys haven't had to make because you go out and win 2 races last year, it doesn't matter. You could DNF literally every race, still make the playoffs, still be fine. Now it matters.
Yeah, and crucially, this is the second race in a row for Bubba Wallace where he's finished 34th or worse. He was involved in a crash last week at Darlington, busted the toe link, was super slow the rest of the day, didn't have a chance. And this time, it's a rule in a stock car racing. If you're going to wreck someone, you can't wreck yourself while doing it.
Landon Castle.
Carson Hocevar stayed on the racetrack.
Yeah.
Bubba Wallace did not, and that was kind of the end-all be-all in that situation. It's been, of course, something with Bubba throughout his career. I think back to the 2022 race at Las Vegas where he took out Kyle Larson, where oftentimes when he gets on the wrong end of something on the racetrack, he sees red, acts before he thinks about it. And in this format, you really can't do that because, like you mentioned, there's no win to save your hide. Bubba Wallace dropped 8 points. Dropped 8 positions in the point standings. He was comfortably top 3 coming into Darlington, back-to-back finishes outside the top 30. Drops all the way to, I think he's in 11th now, just ahead of Joey Logano.
Yeah, and that's, again, every single point matters. Now, if you're Tyler Reddick, you don't have a great day, you won, 3-4 races this year?
On to the next one.
You can afford to finish 15th. Or, it's not that big a deal. You have more, you had at least, coming into Martinsville, a 95-point lead. That's more than a race distance on Ryan Blaney. I think you're okay. You don't run well at Martinsville. You pick up the pieces. You're off this weekend for Easter, right? But you go to the next track, you win another race. It's not that big a deal. It's bigger for Bubba because, you go from 3rd in the point standings, you drop 8 spots, now you're 11th. Now you're 5 spots away from the cut line.
Yeah.
And it's not a cut line dictated by wins anymore. It's a cut line dictated by how well you finish and how consistent you are throughout the year and throughout the summer. You have a couple more races like this, you're in some trouble.
Yeah, truthfully, and you talked about Ryan Blaney right there. All 3, 4, if you count the 21 Penske cars, we're in the top 10 this week. Second week in a row we've been able to say Team Penske very good in this higher horsepower, lower downforce package, save for Logano a week ago. But he bounced back, finished best of all the Penske cars, 3rd place. He thought he had enough speed to potentially win the race. He said afterwards that if he was in the 9's position, he probably wins the race. Just a matter of the way the cards fell. Cindric had another great run, finished in the top 10, ran top 5 most of the day. Blaney was, I think, the second fastest car to Denny Hamlin. He got into an incident with Hamlin himself on the racetrack, got put in the outside wall, lost a good chance to go and chase the leaders down. In that final run to the checkered flag, Josh Berry was solid all race long. What do you make of Team Penske?
Another good week. You know, obviously Joey Logano had a terrible race car last week, but these are the kind of runs you have to have. Ryan Blaney's been good all season. Ryan Blaney is not somebody that you worry about at all right now. You know, he's second in the points comfortably. He's starting to chase down Tyler Reddick at least a little bit. Not worried about Blaney. Joey Logano, you're a little worried about. Not a great run at Vegas. Not a great run at Darlington. Obviously good this week. So there's some speed in the race car. Austin Cindric and Josh Berry, you know, truthfully, I think Josh Berry got into the playoffs last year because he won a race. I mean, he was good. He wasn't great.
Yeah.
Little bit more worried about Austin Cindric and Josh Berry. You know, Austin Cindric won on debut at Daytona, and, you know, I know you love Austin Cindric, but it's kind of been all downhill since then.
It has been. It has.
I think, you know, it's a good result for Penske. You got to build off of it. You have to show that you can build off of it. Kind of like the Hendrick guys. Chase Elliott has to show he can build off of this win. You know, we talked about Chevy getting a brand new car and kind of the struggles they've had. Ford seems to have had, obviously didn't get a brand new car, but kind of similar struggles. It's been Toyota on top for most of the start of the year. I think, you know, both the Ford camp with RFK running really well last week, Penske running really well this week, and Chevy with the Hendrick cars running really well this week. You got to build off these really good finishes, especially going into, you know, we're kind of a month away from it, but the start of the summer where races get long and you go to Michigan and you go to Pocono and you have to perform well at those races because those races are what set you up for a potential championship run.
Yeah, you got to learn to control the big tracks, right? That's where these titles are dictated. We go off this week for Easter, then Bristol Motor Speedway, another short track the week after that. But there is NASCAR racing next weekend.
There is.
The Truck Series and O'Reilly Auto Parts Series go to the Rockingham, track that I really kind of wish the Cup cars are going to get to go to in short order. Like to see them there, especially with this higher horsepower that they've been running. But nonetheless, we should have a couple of great shows this coming weekend.
Listen, the truck race and the Xfinity race, more so the Xfinity race, really good last year at Rockingham. Sad that Catherine Legg took out Casey Kane. Very sad. But both those races were really good last year. I hope we see another really good show this year. Rockingham is a great track for NASCAR, kind of like North Wilkesboro. I like Rockingham as a track, and, you know, it would be cool to see it on the Cup calendar. I don't know whether you take a second date away from somebody or maybe you lose a race. Hopefully we don't lose a race because I love the calendar that we have right now. But Rockingham is a very NASCAR-centric track.
It is. It's asymmetrical. It's super steep banking. It's a funky track. Nothing about it's normal, and I think that is really what makes NASCAR tracks NASCAR like. I mean, I think of even Darlington where we were at last week. It's weird, shaped like an egg. It's super thin. The banking is funky. The track, the pavement kills your tires. I think there's a lot to love when it comes to Rockingham, Darlington, those kind of funky tracks, the old tracks. And I'm really glad that they've started to bring back tracks again, like Rockingham and like North Wilkesboro, like you mentioned.
Really, really glad about that too. Really excited for Bristol, though. We've seen a couple tire conservation shows the last couple of years. Bristol could be a really, really good race.
And especially with the changes that were made this year to the package, taking away downforce and adding horsepower to these race cars. First time they've really committed to that in the Gen 7 era. Bristol has not had the best races in the Gen 7 era. You know, you think about the tire disaster in the spring race in 2024. That was followed up by Kyle Larson running everybody over in the fall race. Then, same story last spring with Larson running everyone over, and another tire disaster last fall. But really come to mind, I also think of the 2022 summer race where a bunch of, particularly the Fords, were losing tires in that race as well. And I think every single Toyota had some kind of engine issue in that race. Bristol in the Gen 7, outside of the dirt races, which were fine in their own right, not really had the best track record.
Listen, this is going to be a controversial take, and I'm well aware of it. Regardless of how good or bad the race is, there are let's say 9 races in the Cup Series I'm guaranteed to watch every year. 11. I'm gonna watch the Atlanta races. I'm gonna watch.
Shocker.
I'm gonna watch Daytona. Gonna watch Talladega. I'm gonna watch all the road courses, and I'm going to watch the Bristol night race.
Absolutely.
The Bristol night race is a classic. You could listen. Kyle Larson could lap the field 4 times. I'm still gonna watch. Yeah. It doesn't put on a great show. You are correct. The last couple of years, we've had a couple shows that aren't particularly good, and admittedly, probably not watching the Bristol Spring Race because the final round of the Masters will be on, and love Bristol watching the final round of the Masters.
You don't get 2 screens set up?
No.
Not a
No,
2-screen
it
guy?
is the final round of the Masters.
Okay.
It's the only thing on.
Okay.
But the night race at Bristol is the night race at Bristol.
It is.
I'm going to watch, regardless of how good or bad the race is. I think there's a lot of things we could do to make the racing better. I hope the racing is better. Still going to watch it.
Yeah. I'm watching every week. I've always got it at the very least. Second screen, it's NASCAR.
Yeah.
Love it. All kinds of racing. Beyond NASCAR, Indycar went to Barber. They went racing around a bunch of giant bugs down in Alabama.
Well, no, there's a couple mannequins. Remember, you remember Georgina?
I don't remember Georgina. I just remember the bugs.
We got to show you Georgina.
Bugs terrify me.
Shame.
I'm never going to Barber because they've got giant bugs there.
Actually, listen, I've been to Barber a couple times, both as a fan to watch the race. I think I said last week the 2 Barber races I went to, Joseph Newgarden has won both, which is why I don't go to Barber anymore. But I've also been to just go to the museum. Mr. Barber built a spectacular museum, incredible motorcycle collection, incredible car collection. I went with my dad a couple years ago. It really, really awesome. They were doing a track day. I think we saw somebody spin out the chicane, the really downhill corkscrew like chicane. That's kind of like Laguna Seca, but not really. I like Barber. Barber's it's been on the IndyCar schedule for now 16 years, I think. Yeah. So, IndyCar likes Barber. Barber likes IndyCar. It's sticking around.
And good to get an IndyCar race down south in Alabama. And we could tell you weren't at the Barber race this weekend because Joseph Newgarden didn't win. It was Alex Palou, shocker, leading every lap and route to victory.
Yeah, it was Alex Palou. Admittedly, Alex Palou led. I don't think he led every lap. I think he led most of the laps.
It felt like he led every lap. Usually does.
Yes. Still a really good race, though. Like, in terms of strategy, you had Christian Lundgaard working his way up through the field. Everybody thought Christian Lundgaard was going to get Alex Palou on that final stop, and by everybody, I mean my dad and I. And by we thought, it means we hoped that Christian Lundgaard was going to get Alex Palou on the final stop. Good race. Sucks that the McLaren crew pulled an Andretti and they couldn't get Christian Lundgaard's tire on. But the Andretti crew was great. Kyle Kirkwood still a 2-point championship lead over Alex Palou. Overall, really, really solid. Really solid race at Barber. Really strange weekend, but really solid race.
Yeah, it's a strange weekend, maybe in particular for Scott McLaughlin, who had one of the weirdest crashes I've ever seen. I first saw it scrolling on my Instagram feed in the middle of calling a baseball game. I was like, holy cow. That's one of the scarier wrecks I've seen in racing.
Yeah.
It went straight through the barrier, it looked like.
Yeah. I haven't seen a car go straight through the fence like that. I mean, Austin Dillon tried.
He did. He
but,
tried real hard.
But I haven't seen, as did Ryan Newman. But I haven't seen a car go straight through the fence like that ever. Really glad Scott McLaughlin got out of the car and walked away. But really scary accident. In case you haven't seen it, he drops the right wheels onto the grass going into turn one, loses the back end. Car swaps ends on him, and he backs across the gravel trap, hits the grass, which causes the car to jump up and over the tire barrier and through the catch fence. Glad there were no spectators there, because there are spectators in a lot of spots around Barber, but really, really strange weekend for Scott McLaughlin.
Yeah, one of, truthfully, the strangest crashes I've ever seen. I've seen some strange crashes. I mean, you mentioned Ryan Newman getting launched through the air by another car. Yeah. You know, Austin Dillon in the catch fence, Carl Edwards in the catch fence. You know, I've seen probably about 40 blowovers during, at least it feels like 40 blowovers during Indy 500 practice. I remember in particular Sebastian Bourdais, and I think it was 2017, 2018.
It was qualifying 2017 out of turn 2. He ran a first lap of like 2:34, lost it in the middle of the short chute. I think he broke his back and was out for all but the final race.
I had a buddy who's a big Sebastian Bourdais fan.
Yeah,
Bourdais fan, and he was
it was a big accident.
Very
big accident in qualifying. But, I mean, you talk about Scott McLaughlin's accident. Will Power's accident was almost just as bad, going straight on into the hairpin. Rear brakes completely failed, just smashes front wing first into the tire barrier. I mean, only 2 accidents of the weekend, but couple of really big accidents. And it sucks because we talked about Will Power going to Penske, 4 weekends, 4 accidents. He had the accident in practice at St. Pete. He tagged the outside wall. He had the accident in qualifying at Phoenix. The car swapped ends in 1 and 2, backed into the wall. He kind of sort of had an accident in Arlington. Dixon spun in practice. Will Power kind of T-boned him accidentally. Not a ton of damage. Still brought out a red flag in practice. And then, honestly, this one completely out of his control. Rear brakes failed going into the hairpin. Nothing he could really do about it.
And probably the scariest feeling you can get as a race car driver is your brakes going away as you enter a corner.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it in F1 a couple of times as well this season, or I guess as a rear axle more than rear brake issue. But even still, I mean, and I think, of course, turn 1 at Pocono is another one that I always think of brake failures leading to huge crashes.
It's not quite as bad as the front tires popping off into the hairpin at China, but it's somewhere up there. Yeah.
Not great. Lots of great racing this weekend.
Yeah.
But it got started off Sunday morning technically, but basically Saturday night.
1 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's still nighttime for most of us. Party animals, you and I.
Listen, the date doesn't change until I go to sleep.
That's very true.
Even if I'm up till 3 a.m., still Saturday.
That's very true. Granted, I was snug like a bug in a rug because I was calling a baseball game on Sunday, so I didn't catch most. I certainly caught the highlights.
I was up till 3 a.m.
It was a good one.
Qualifying was really interesting. Max Verstappen knocked out in Q2.
Becoming more common.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's some Max Verstappen rumors. I'll touch on those in a second. Mercedes looked really fast all weekend, but then it was the same story off the line that we've seen for most of the year. All 22 cars started the race this time. First time this season that all 22 cars have started the race.
Good stuff.
But the Mercedes cars get bogged down off the start, particularly Kimi Antonelli. Antonelli went from pole to 6th by the exit at turn number 1. Not a great start for Kimi. that Charles and the two McLarens get by George Russell in turn number 1. Lando was last of the cars around turn number 1 to get by George. And then it got really interesting because Oscar Piastri started to walk away. And George gets by Lando relatively quickly. Had some trouble getting by Charles. Eventually gets by Charles. Starts to chase after Oscar Piastri. You're thinking, okay, he's gonna nab Oscar Piastri. George Russell's gonna run away with this. Coming out of 130R, go to the inside into the chicane, gets by Oscar Piastri, but then same thing we saw in China, used up all of his energy down the back straight and into 130R, get to the front straightaway, Oscar Piastri blows his doors off down the front straightaway. And Oscar Piastri never got passed by George Russell after that. You can tell me it's not good racing. I think it's good racing. I really do. I think the Mercedes cars are awful in traffic, especially in dirty air, and we really saw that. Kimi Antonelli had a lot of trouble. He got by Lando relatively quickly. He had a lot of trouble getting by Charles. It took him probably, 15 laps to get by Charles Leclerc. And we talked about before the show, the Ferraris are really bad in a straight line.
Yeah.
The Ferraris are awful in a straight line. We saw that at China. Oscar Piastri gets outside that 1 second window of George Russell right before the first pit stop, and George couldn't catch him. It's like, the only way to describe it is like it's like drafting at Daytona, right? You got the bubble of air that you're not really pushing the bumper of the car in front of you. You're kind of pushing this bubble of air, and it was like that. George couldn't get closer than a second, which means he couldn't get overtake, which means he couldn't overtake Oscar Piastri. And I thought it created really good racing. Oscar dives into the pits first. Well, Lando and Charles dive into the pits. Oscar dives into the pits. George and Kimi continue on, and you're like, okay, Mercedes cars are in clean air. They're gonna get past these guys. George comes out of the pits, and he's under threat from Charles Leclerc because they had undercut him. And now Oscar Piastri has the race lead, but has what would be the essential race lead by more than a second. And you're thinking, man, Oscar Piastri, really good shot to win this race. And then Franco Colapinto decides to pull a Franco Colapinto and Ollie Behrman into the barrier to cause a safety car, which we could talk about that whole situation separately. Kimi Antonelli comes into the pits under the safety car, comes out first and runs away with it. But once that happened, he pulls away from Oscar. George couldn't get by Oscar. George actually got overtaken by the Ferraris at one point, and he was under threat from Lando Norris. I think, and maybe it was just Suzuka because, as I talked about last week, Suzuka, a little bit different from tracks we've seen so far this year. Once the Mercedes cars kind of get into dirty air, and they don't have that super long straightaway to build a ton of speed, they're really not good. Like George was in a lot of trouble. Kimi had a lot of trouble overtaking people. Once they get into clean air, they're fine. I mean, Kimi was setting the fastest lap of the race in clean air, but he couldn't get by Charles. George couldn't get by Oscar. It's actually really interesting.
Yeah, it's certainly something to keep an eye on, but you mentioned Oscar Piastri led much of this race. Is it safe to say that McLaren are okay so long as they see the lights go out?
I think yes and no. I think Oscar Piastri, granted we've only seen one race and not a ton of straightaways. I think if we were to actually go to Bahrain, I think it would be a primarily Mercedes-led race because I think Mercedes is so good on the straightaways, and Bahrain has 4 really long ones. Excuse me. I think, though, that if we go somewhere like Jeddah, I think McLaren's got the advantage. I think Ferrari might have the advantage. I think the technical sections is really where McLaren thrives. And I think Oscar Piastri's really, really good. We saw Oscar be really good. We've seen Lando twice now, once at Melbourne, once in Suzuka. Lando doesn't look nearly as strong as Oscar. And maybe that's just adjusting to the technical regulations. I don't know. I mean,
I got a hot take there.
I think Oscar I think Oscar might be the team leader this year.
Well, my hot take falls in line with that. I just think Oscar's better than Lando. I thought it for a lot of last season, and Oscar showed his youth compared to Lando's more veteran presence, which, again, can't believe I'm saying Lando's a veteran, but he's been in Formula One for quite some time now.
Yeah.
I think that's what showed its head last year. I do think Oscar has more talent than Lando. Just wasn't able to capitalize on that title position a season ago.
I think that definitely could be true. I think a lot of what we've seen so far has to do with the type of track. China does have that technical section, but it's also got 3 really long straights.
Yeah.
Melbourne has a lot of really long straights, and we saw Mercedes dominate at those tracks. You get to a track like Suzuka, only one straightaway-ish. I mean, front straightaway's pretty good sized. You've got kind of that back straightaway coming out of Spoon and into 130R, but you didn't see a lot of overtaking into 130R. I think the McLaren cars are really good in technical sections of the race course. I think if we don't go to Zandvoort anymore, and it's a shame, I think if we were to go to Zandvoort, I think you'd see McLaren dominate at Zandvoort. I think a lot of what we're going to see this year is very track dependent.
Well, we have 35 days now until we get to go see Formula One cars on track again. They're missing out on Bahrain and Jeddah because of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. They'll be back in Miami, racing outside the Miami Dolphins Stadium for, this will be year 4? Year 5 of the Miami Grand Prix.
I think obviously we're going to have a lot of changes in 35 days. You can make a lot of upgrades. Ferrari's rumored to be bringing a power unit upgrade. I think you're kind of going to see Mercedes dominate, though, because you've got the 3 pretty good-sized straights, the 2 back straightaways and the front straightaway. I think maybe when we get to Canada's a little bit more technical. Obviously, you got the really long back straightaway, but the first and second sector are pretty technical. I think McLaren could definitely be really good there. I think McLaren could be really, really good at Monaco. And maybe Ferrari's up there too, but based on how incredibly hard it is to pass at Monaco, I think Ferrari and McLaren have a really good shot to beat Mercedes there. And with the 2 Middle East races not being on the calendar, I think that makes the title fight really interesting.
Yeah, because, I mean, as you mentioned, Bahrain probably plays to Mercedes' strengths, and Jeddah kind of flips things around. But it's also similar to what I mentioned last week. Those are just 2 races that the Mercedes cars and Kimi Antonelli don't have to worry about losing points in. They don't have to worry about, maybe we don't, get off the line right, maybe we get into an incident. Everyone zeroes out. Those are even days, and it shortens the schedule, makes it a little bit easier for them to maintain after what is essentially a 3-race stretch where it's been testing, even though points have counted. Last thing I wanted to touch on was we talked about the regulations. A lot of drivers had comments about how it felt still feels sort of unnatural to be making a nice move on somebody and then you completely get your doors blown off because you're out of battery, and they're still trying to adapt to that. And for a long time, the most outspoken person against that has been Max Verstappen, and he is getting a lot more straightforward with his comments about retirement from Formula One in general over the last couple of weeks, and it got especially bad this weekend. He just ran at the Nürburgring in a GT3 car, if I recall correctly, and seemed to enjoy himself quite a lot in doing that. Is there a possibility that this is the last time we see Max Verstappen in an F1 car? What do you make of that?
I think it's... Honestly, I love Max. I think Max is trying to get out of his Red Bull contract. I think he's really unhappy right now, and I would be too. You win a handful of championships, and now you're running 7th. I mean, they were legitimately 7th on pace this weekend. You run 7th, you get knocked out in Q2, unless the Red Bull car gets a whole lot better. I could see Max leaving at the end of the year. I don't think he retires from Formula One forever, though. I think that he spends a year in GT, spends a year, maybe 2 years in GT, gets out of the Red Bull contract, maybe free to go to Mercedes, maybe free to go to Ferrari. I mean, I'm not like Kimi Räikkönen kind of did something similar. I mean, Kimi ended up coming back in a Lotus, which was really weird. But he was really good in that Lotus. And I think this is a little bit of a different time. I don't think you can run as well in a Lotus as Kimi Räikkönen ran in a Lotus. But I think Max is really unhappy at Red Bull. And I think that's what's driving a lot of this. With Adrian Newey leaving and Christian Horner being forced out, rightfully so, I think there's a lot of changes going on at Red Bull. I think Max is really unhappy. I can't see Max doing anything other than Formula One, though. If Max retires from Formula One and never returns, that will be the greatest tragedy in the history of the sport. Because Max has the potential to be one of the best drivers we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, he won 19 out of 21 races in a season.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. Nobody has ever done that. If Max retires from Formula One because of this, I think it's going to be one of the greatest tragedies we've ever seen in the history of the sport.
Yeah, it would be. It certainly would be something. I mean, it's maybe even crazier than Barry Sanders retiring at the top of his game, where I would say that's at least a fair comparison, if not unfair, to Max Verstappen, which says a lot because of the player that Barry Sanders was. Let's get on to predictions. Only 2 races this week, and we mentioned them off the top of the show. Rockingham, the NASCAR Truck Series, and O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Come here once a year. It's really funky at racetrack, funky to pick. It's already, these series are kind of funky in and of themselves, but what do you make of the truck race?
I don't know, Nate. I mean, I think the truck race could be really interesting. I'll go Grant Enfinger.
It's like you were reading my mind, because I was trying to think of my pick as you were talking, and I was thinking Grant Enfinger as well. But the other guy I was thinking, so I'll go with him, was Caden Honeycutt in that 11 truck. It's pretty much fast everywhere. What about the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series?
I'm going for the three-peat. Justin Allgaier, laying it down. I think I probably would have picked Justin Allgaier last week at Martinsville. Really big Justin Allgaier fan. Ever since he won that race in Montreal that one time. Really big that Robbie Gordon thought he won. Really big Justin Allgaier fan, so I'm going Justin Allgaier.
Probably going to be the correct pick, all things considered, but I'll spice it up a little bit. I'm going to go with Taylor Gray, a guy who's proven that he can be pretty good on these shorter racetracks, these more funky, classic kind of NASCAR racetracks that the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series goes to.
It'll be really interesting. I'm excited. Only racing this weekend. IndyCar off a couple weeks. They go to Long Beach on April 19th. Then we get into it, Nate.
Yeah,
it's
May. What's that one song? It's gonna be May.
I'm going back home to Indiana. I'm gonna listen. I will sing a verse of the song every single show in May. You don't want to hear me sing.
You heard it here first.
You don't want to hear me sing. It's a terrible idea. But I'm going to do it, and you people are going to enjoy it.
I'm going to enjoy it.
I don't think you will.
At the very least. I'll have good stuff to laugh at.
I think about episode number 2, you're going to be like, do I really have to listen to you sing for 15 seconds again? Like, yes, you do.
I guess that means I got about a month to get some earplugs.
You do, and you should get some good ones, because I'll make your ears bleed.
It's going to be all for this week's episode of Between the Lines. He's Adam Crooks. I'm Nate Polite. Thanks for watching.
I am Adam Crooks.